Hello, everyone. I'm Benjamin Francis with the Wet Center. Today, we're talking about improving your sales with AgProz co-founder Neil. Is it Knaak or Knack?
Canuck, Canuck, yeah,
Knaak. Okay,
yeah,
well, I was wrong on both of those. Neil Knaak.
it's all good.
So, Neil, I know you've got a very diverse background in the ag space, technology, ag, the whole mixture. I would say it's very rare to find someone of your skill set, not only in sales, but also with the experience in ag too. So, would you mind just running us through your background and basically what led you here today?
Absolutely. So, yeah, pretty simple. We farmed peaches down in the kind of the Reedley Kingsburg area. So I'm a fourth generation grower. Was my grandpa's father. Started here in the Reedley area, and yeah, just once it gets in your blood, it's just I think it's just that primordial thing of growing. It's something for and just people got to eat, as one of my ag mentors always says. So it's a very important industry. And so grew up on the farm, and then basically got to a point where we weren't kind of the right size, so it really didn't work out. Sat down with my mentor, and he's like, I don't know any other profession besides sales that you can help people set your own income, set your own schedule, kind of be your own boss, and just it's one of the most kind of profitable sectors to be in. And so I jumped in, got into equipment sales, and did some case Kubota and then different implements, but always just had a slant for ag tech, just passionate about it. Just kind of felt like my dad really didn't embrace a lot of it. He was very the old school farmer, and kind of that mentality. Well, my grandpa did it that way and dad did it that way, and just it's the way it is. So that always kind of put me on this course of how can we do things better, how can we be more efficient, have more just improve the business. So that always kind of got me excited. And then so after going through a couple different companies, so John Deere for a while, got into ag tech consulting, and that just kind of grew out of the love of ag tech and then just helping people. And so I was able to do that for 7 years. And really, my job was to come alongside a company. Sometimes they were domestic, dealt with some international companies, and just help coach them on how to understand, the needs are, how to communicate your message, and then deploy here in California specifically. So, and I loved it. It was a phenomenal business. Business was doing well. There's a lot of people that need help, and apparently thought I was good enough to swing at it. So and I could have kind of continued that, but then this opportunity of AgProz came up, and it took what I was doing and made it more on a scale level, and I could help even more people. And kind of through that process, I found a sales methodology that really just I was able to apply to my life, kind of tweak it a little bit to apply to ag. That's called Sandler, for those who are curious. There's actually a office here in Fresno. So, and that gave me kind of the tools to just have better conversations and kind of prove my skill set in growing the business. So yeah, I had my fingers a lot of things. Like you said, co-founder to the AgProz program, and it's just kind of that's what excites me and gets me going.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that background. So, going into we'll go more into some of the tactical questions, but just gathering a little bit more background information. I've been a fan of AgProz for our startups here that go through the accelerator, or just a part of the Wet Center ecosystem that are looking to grow and find more customers in our region here.
Sure.
Do you mind just running us through how AgProz came about, what the need was, and then let's just run through what it does and how ag tech companies are using it to grow their business?
Yeah, you bet. So, so, so the original founder was a gentleman, John Crum. He's still, heavily involved in ag, and so in his early career, he started at a company, and it's kind of a typical story. Actually, it mirrored mine in a lot of ways. You go to work for a business. They give you kind of the basics, so that you get a truck, usually white, Chevy or Ford. You're given an expense card. Here you can take guys to lunch. And then here's your sandbox. Here's where you're going to go play. Maybe it's I-5 to 198, or some sort of area to focus on, and maybe a list of like the top 10 growers in that area, but literally you're slapped on the tush and it's like, go get them, Tiger. And so that does work, but it just takes a lot of time and you're starting from scratch. So, and that literally was John's kind of plight as he started a new company. They gave him pretty much a good chunk of the state, and all those other tools we talked about and kind of a list. And so John was going out and trying to find these guys. He'd find a little bit of information on one, have to write it down, go home, do a search, go on Hoover's, Mantis, something, trying to find more information about these growers. And it's just a long-winded process. So, hate to go so cheesy as like, there's got to be a better way, but that was kind of the question that was going through his mind. And his search really didn't find much. I mean, there's pieces out there. There's software for real estate people. There's even like a hunting deal that kind of gives you some base tax information, but that's really just one small slice of the pie. That just answers who owns it. And half the time anyways, it could be a, LLC, or, it might be like 2B, family trust. And then, how does that help you, establish a relationship? So through that process, he started hunting around for somebody to help him kind of build it. And we had already been friends. We met through our John Deere connection. And, he called up and said, "Hey, do you know any coders?" And I'm like, "Actually, I do." And so we started getting together. The more he described it, I mean, almost instantly, I'm like, I got to have this product. I need this. I mean, great. I'm glad you kind of started this thing, but I need this. This is something that's missing in my sales career and path. So basically I did some work for him, called him back and said, "Man, I want in. I don't know what it looks like." And he's like, "Well, I don't know what it looks like either. We're just starting." And so that was literally around 2014. And so we set out and really just, geared to build a tool for the ag salesman, specifically for the guy who's out there. We've all kind of done it. You see a field and you can get to a stage where you can just spot it. Looking at that field, you can say, I can help that guy, or that field is well groomed or taken care of. And so that's a grower that fits kind of my ideal client. So how do you start? Where do you go? And, with a lack of there really being any strong tools, he started to build one. That's really kind of what, was the birth of it. And since it's evolved to become a tool that's, just better empowers anybody selling into ag. And it's funny, we first thought that would be guys like us, equipment sales guys. And we do have quite a few ag sales guys on the system, but I think we underestimated the entire ecosystem of ag sales and marketing. We found out that irrigation guys were really hungry for, and just certain sectors are just very competitive. There's a lot of guys, and there's acres are finite. There's only so many, square acres of land. And so everybody's kind of fighting over those same growers, so to speak. And so how do you get to know your territory better? How do you establish better relationships and have better knowledge about your clients and growers? And that's AgProz.
Awesome. And real quick to the audience before I keep going, if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A. We'll read them off throughout the session. So Neil, I'm going to take it from the basics with my limited experience here and ask a few questions about how, let's just say a founder or agtech salesperson would use this system a little bit further. So is AgProz meant to be used sitting in front of a computer, kind of planning out as far as some of the geographies of some of the other areas? But you mentioned that you can use it on the go. So when you're out in the field, you can kind of place it. How would you see AgProz being used? Is it more used by the computer, or is it more like you head out there as you're talking with customers, you start pulling up information on the go? Maybe a combination of both.
Absolutely. Ag is a very boots on the ground industry. For those who don't know, they should. Really, the goal of any sort of ag marketing campaign should be to a face-to-face meeting. You really need to, establish that relationship and build trust. And so to get there, yeah, you have to be in front of the grower. So it is a blend. We have a desktop version and an app. We actually started with the app because we knew a majority of our, users and us ourselves are out in the field. We're on the go. We don't always have time to sit there. And back to John's problem of, having to take that information home and then research it. You can do it all from an app now. So from a snapshot view, you can take AgProz. Again, when you're passing that field and rubbernecking and you can't see who owns it or can't see a truck, AgProz is going to not only tell you who's farming it, what crops they grow, how many acres of each, and where their land is. So what that does is it empowers a rep to better understand who's a good fit and then who's not. And that way you're not, bugging every guy you go to. Really, as a core foundational principle to AgProz is we're grower first. And I'll unpack that a little bit, especially in my consulting business. So many companies are just in love with their product and not understanding that, growers' needs vary from region to region, from grower to grower. And the better you can understand their operation and then how your product or service best, fills their need, that's the goal right there. So hopefully that answered your question. It is a combination of both, with the intention of, getting that meeting, establishing a relationship, and then long-term building trust.
Let's go. Let's go for some of the audience here that may have never even done an ag sale, and maybe they're looking to start on that. What is the process? How are people currently selling without AgProz? And then when they come across a field, they're out and about on sales calls, versus when they have AgProz, and how that changes their effectiveness and how they would approach. I know we've talked about kind of some scenarios before of
Yeah,
how like it's been done, and then now with this information, how they can come across as a little more connected and educated from the get-go.
absolutely. It just goes back to kind of knowing your customer, and a little caveat to that, and I think it's just a good lesson learned is, really you want to know what problem your product solves. That's paramount. And don't get so in love with what it is. Figure out what problems you're solving. Figure out how you're helping your clients or potential growers and ones you haven't met yet. So really, in trying to find these people historically, was just my story was, here's your truck, here's your expense card, here's your sandbox, and just go get them. And on average, they say it's about 2.5, 3 years before really establishing a good territory and knowing the area. So that's kind of the old way. Now with AgProz, if you kind of really understand what your product problem it solves, you're able to hone into your ideal client. We have a lot of features built in that are like, so you find a grower, and you can do that by actually searching by crop. You can tell the map, only show me, almond growers or pistachio growers in this county. And then even filter it further. You could say, okay, I need almond growers, but I really need not a hobby guy, just a little bit bigger than that. So you can filter in minimum and maximum acres to kind of dial in. So now you got a target, you got who we're going after, you understand the problem you solve, and you can definitely tailor your marketing strategies to those crops. And why that's important is because obviously ag is just very seasonal, and certain times of the year guys are slammed, and other times they're busy. For example, winter time is a citrus guy. That's when they harvest. So you're not going to be trying to pitch to them in the off season, if you will, because it's go time. It's when they make their money, and then afterwards it slows down. And then obviously, more of the stone fruit and other crops are just seasonal. So able to hone in on your ideal target client and then go find them is what our tool does. And so it shaves off a lot of time. It gives you great knowledge on who they are. Like you said, there's a lot of awesome stories we have. We have a phenomenal tribe of AgProz users, because they're guys that, like if you're a sales rep and just, your idea of going after it is boots on the desk and just waiting for the phone to ring, I'll be honest, is what we do is probably not for you. We help the people that are out there looking to help, trying to search for more business, because we're going to hone you in on who you should be in front of, and then give you the tools to support that. So really, the most important thing that is lacking in a lot of sales is just follow up. Um, these guys, and that's a problem in the industry. Growers are kind of skeptical of a lot of new and innovative tech because they've seen so many come through. A lot of times, you'll make that pitch and it's like, well, this is great. Hope you're around in 9 months. So, really about staying consistent in their life and staying up on that. And we do that with, some calendar push notifications and just keep things really simple and streamlined. And so, really it's about finding the right targets, getting ahead of them, and diving into their business. Yeah.
Well, let's go back to where you're using AgProz, you're gaining information on a specific customer or just region of customers.
Sure.
What do you do with this information, Neil? Are you calling? Are you just walking up on the farm? Like, what do you do after next step once you're using the system, you're targeting your customers? You have a lot of sales experience here. You've seen what works, what doesn't. What would you recommend someone to do to take that first step?
Oh, great question. So it's hard to answer because everybody's kind of business. And even for me, it changed as I worked with different clients and different products. Phone is really a tool to get that face-to-face meeting. So what I started doing, obviously after AgProz existed, was back to finding your ideal customer, learning about them, gaining the information you need, and then our system will actually allow you to Google search them from the app, from your phone. So now you got an office number, literally within a couple clicks. You not only know who to ask for, the crops they grow, where they farm. You got a pretty good idea of their business. So I would be leveraging the phone, but definitely you have to be out in the field. You have to know your clients, know their equipment, be present, be there, be a face, be a person. It's funny. I have 3 young boys, and I coach them. I hope they're salesmen someday in some way, because we're all in sales, one way or another. Especially if you're married, you're having to convince. But really, to me, it's as simple as asking better questions. So, how do you kind of build that relationship? It's just kind of come in and being curious, and just understand that growers really, they make purchasing decisions, for their reasons, not yours. So I used to, in my consulting days, I was working with a company, and they came in and they had a literal 60 slide pitch deck, right? PowerPoint presentation. And so, they came in, I set some meetings up for them, and they're just going through it. And it's an hour and a half, and the first 20 minutes was just history on the company. Growers are busy guys typically, and some are going to be more, the personalities, they want to know the history and all that. But most of the time it's like, how can you help them? What need or problem are you help fixing? And really you just need to focus there. Another little quick story on the leveraging AgProz. We had one of our users, he's talking to a grower, and right in the parking lot, he had looked him up and realized he had like 200 acres of onions. Now going into that meeting prior, he had no knowledge of that. So they're going through their presentation, talking about, irrigation type stuff. And right at the end, the rep goes, "Hey, ever thought about, doing this on your onions?" And the guy's like, "I didn't even know you could do that on onions," and they jumped right into it. So him having that knowledge actually gained, additional business and additional trust, and just knowing his operation.
So going to the grower's needs, Neil, and
Yeah.
this may be too general of a question, but obviously there's a list of priorities, right, on their end. What type of questions would you recommend? Let's just hit the basics here of what salespeople should be asking growers to determine if they're going to be a fit or not. And I know that's very dependent on the technology, but is there anything along the lines, some of the basis, or maybe even just the mentalities on how they should be asking these questions to determine if they're a fit? We know that a lot of times people like going in there, spilling everything about the technology, how it works, how the system interface is just amazing.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of listening going on. So what type of questions do you typically or would you recommend to a brand new salesperson, or at least the mentality that would go into them?
Sure. So through the training I had, there's good processes for all of this. They teach a technique called upfront contract, and that's basically having a mutual agreement between you and the grower. So um, it's a good process just to have a base understanding of, here I'm coming in, and you obviously are busy. You've been doing what you're doing for the last probably several generations. So a lot of it's mindset, honestly. Um, you stop trying to sell them. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Back to that, 60 slide pitch deck. That all 60 slides were their reasons for purchasing the product or believing in them. Had
Mhm.
nothing to do with the growers' problems. When I coach people, I really distill it down to, they have one or two probably things that really bother them about their job, and if your product or service can kind of help fix or solve that, camp out there. Don't try to. So many guys come in and it's just a big pitch, hey, better yields, better crops. Everybody says that coming through the door, so sound different. Don't be like every other guy. So I know that's not maybe specific questions per se, but you need to have the right mentality, and they need to be talking more than you. It should be like a 70-30 split. They should be talking definitely 70% of the time, because if you come in there and you're just punching your ideas down their throat, it turns into instead of a congruent conversation, or you're both, peer to peer, it's actually very, it's uneven. It's you trying to convince them or pitch them. So come in just curious. I'd ask a lot of questions about their operation, what they've done in the past, what's worked, what doesn't work, and then really tailor it to your product or solutions. And really going into it, you should have written down, I'd say, the top 5 to maybe 7 major objections that you get. Because if you do it for any period of time, any product or service, and I had the unique position of representing multiple, so I got to see a few, but it always took a couple months to start hearing the pushback. And don't fight it, don't combat it. A lot of times I would kind of agree with them, just to soften it, and then kind of reapproach and other questions, because maybe it's a technology they tried before. That happens a lot. The industry is tough because so many people have come in with early products, not been ready for full market deployment, and then kind of stub their toe on their way in. So you might have a grower say, I tried your tech, didn't work. In fact, I got a whole pallet of it in the back barn. You want to see it? I literally had that almost exact conversation. And so you just kind of have to be very humble and say, hey, yeah, early version didn't work of this tech, right? But here's how we feel. We've kind of checked off some of those boxes, and then just simply ask, are you even open to taking a look at this? Because maybe they're so closed-minded that it's just not a fit. And really, you got to have that other side of the, that you really need to be thinking about is your solution is probably not for every grower, right? So the reality is, some are going to buy, some won't, but somebody's out there hunting for your product, so you got to go find them. And so it's really, it's a numbers game, but it's just going in and diving into their business and just asking better questions. And also a key thing is don't hear statements as questions. That's always a big problem with, especially newer salesmen. It's like, man, you guys are, yeah, I heard about you. You're pretty high priced. There's no question there. Most guys go into right, well, here's our value and here's our, that's, they're just making a blanket statement. So don't feel, you have to defend it. I would, not disagree, say, yeah, we are, some might perceive us as that way. Curious though, what have you heard? Find out why he said that. There's always, so kind of, that's another kind of sound technique of reversing what they say, because it's, most people have had experiences in most technologies and things. And so you have to kind of figure out why that didn't work, and then kind of bridge that gap between how your product or solution hopefully doesn't take that same path, right? But be bold, be okay to be strong in things. I think a lot of guys kind of, well, we're decent at this, even I've been guilty of it. But if you have a strong product or service that you believe in, are passionate about, be okay just coming and saying, look, this is what we do good. But then on the flip side of that, be okay saying, hey, this is the areas that we're still figuring out. Because at the end of the day, it's just, people wanting to do right things. And so you coming in saying we're the best and we can, increase your yields and ROI and all these buzzwords, just don't do that. Be a real person. Understand that your product has faults, and it might be the most expensive, in the market. But if you can say, hey, there is more value to us, but here's why other growers, and that's another powerful thing is third-party stories. Definitely be talking about other growers. And back to your earlier question on leveraging AgProz, that's one of the top uses. So once you've kind of gained a little bit of traction, in your area, go find the neighbors. I mean, ag is such a tight-knit group. I mean, these guys talk, they know each other, see each other at coffee, they probably go hunting, whatever. So make sure you're focusing on a lot of your neighbors to the clients you're working with. And ironically, and well, not ironically, but in AgProz, we have the ability to, if you're working with a current farm or grower, you can mark them as a client, and all their properties start changing colors on the map. And so what that does over time is it's almost like a game, right? It's plugging in the map. Where am I strong? Where are some gaps? And you can even mark certain ones as prospects. Maybe you're driving by and, need to get ahead of that guy, but you're not there today. Mark them as a prospect. It's listed out. Gives you a way to follow up and get back with them. But yeah, just know the territory. I mean, they talk. We joke about a rule in ag. It's you literally, and maybe I shouldn't share the secret if there's any growers on here, but you go and say, hey, your neighbor, TR Farms or whatever, and then you pause because they're either going to be like, I can't stand that guy, or yeah, those are good dudes, and so you pause to kind of get the feel whether they're
friend or foe a little bit.
Friend or foe, yeah. I mean, yeah, farming is a great industry, and I do love it dearly, but it's like a good family.
Well, you hit on something that I wanted to touch on during this, and you covered a lot of it, so I don't necessarily want you to repeat yourself here, but
sure.
You mentioned the neighbor, and we know that initial traction of getting, a few customers here and there it's a brute force effort. But one of the ways going in with almost a warm referral, but at least having some level of relevancy in their area, in their life, because if you're servicing this crop, there's a good chance that or this neighbor, then there's a good chance you could probably bring some value to them.
Yeah.
Would you mind just running us through how, and you touched on this, but let's just hit through it one more time, is how currently salespeople are going and utilizing the neighbor concept versus how with AgProz, how they could be more efficient or more effective in their efforts going after some of the surrounding customer or prospects?
Sure. Well, from my experience, a lot of companies aren't leveraging that, and it's powerful. So back to your, I guess to fill into the previous question about what do you ask? A lot of times, the question just needs to be, are you open to looking at a technology like this? Because the answer might be no. And so if that's the case, a follow-up question to that be like, great, I understand. We're not for everybody. Be okay admitting that. Don't be just like, pushing it too hard. We're not for everybody, but if you were me, and I really like this question, if you were me in my position, who would you reach out to? Who's the guy that, likes to try things and wants to be early? And then you can look over the fence, and then after he sees success, then we reapproach.
Yeah.
And that is really key, because that's your goal. Is in every area, there's a handful of guys that just want to be first. I mean, you could just make something up and they'd probably buy it just to see what it does. It's not the norm, but they are out there and they are in every region. So if the guy you called on isn't it, ask who is. They all know who it is. So once you kind of have that established, that's where AgProz is really gonna take it out. I mean, you need some sort of customer base, but if not, you're using AgProz to target growers, by crop, by region, by area, and maybe by size. Certain size growers can take, a little bit more risks versus, a guy with, maybe like 80 or 100 acres. So you're leveraging the data to understand who might be a potential fit, and those guys definitely know each other. So if it's not them, it's just simple as another question. Great, that perfect. I understand. Who could it be? And they love saying, "Oh yeah, that's Jim over there," or that's Bob down at so and so. They all know it. So go find them.
Well, let's talk a little bit on the building trust, building somewhat of a reputation. I know you've done an amazing job with that. I mean, there's a lot of people in this industry that if they don't know you, there's someone that that knows you, and we can take care of it that way. But
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about, as a new company or a new technology or even a new salesperson, what are some of the ways that you can establish trust and stay consistent over time, to where you can eventually work into a customer relationship? Because we both know that if there's no trust in the technology or the person, and maybe in your opinion it's more one or the other, there's no sale that's going to happen.
Yeah, that is the challenge, and that is the power in good sales, understanding. And it's simpler than you think. It's really about an open and honest dialogue. You know, um, uh, they can sniff the guys that are the snake oil salesman, if you will, because they're just promising the world, and no product does that really. So right up front, it's having that right mentality that A, this might not be for you, but B, here's where we're strong, but kind of a balance of it. So it's being honest, and it's being consistent. It's showing up. It's ag is kind of old school. I love that about it, honestly. Box of donuts for the shop guys goes a long ways, right? Um, it's funny, this industry, if you don't know it, hats are still currency. I mean, these crazy things just, and it's also good marketing for you, because I look at them. I know other people do. It's just like, oh, who do you know at so and so, and they're seeing your logo and your brand. So it's about consistency, showing up, being present, having a process, definitely checking in multiple times. If you happen to see good information or a good article, feel free to just share that. Hey, I know you're busy. Here's latest update on nut prices, or an interesting UC extension research on NOW damage, or whatever it is to your industry. Be the information guy, be the resource. Also, third party stories again really help. Hey, we've been working with and I go back and forth on whether to name drop or not. A lot of people do. Me as a personal preference, um, I think if you're blathering everybody's name, then the person you're talking to thinks, well, I'm just going to be added to that list as soon as you close my business. So
Mhm.
my personal preference is, I don't like saying, oh, well, we're working with these big guys. But everybody's got their style, and really at the end of the day, you got to figure out how to sell and communicate being you. Don't don't try to be something else or something you're not. So it's just being genuine, being honest, and consistent, and being a resource, and answer your dang calls. Right? It's shocking to me how many people just it's just simple, courteous, simple common courtesy is just being there, and being present. But there is, at least in my opinion, no real shortcut. Um, However, I can say on a positive, on the other side of establishing trust, it goes a long ways. I mean, they want to help. I have these growers are my friends. These are buddies, and people used to ask what I do, and I said, well, I happen to be buddies with a lot of large farming outfits, and people want to get to know my buddies. And I kind of work as both the buddy introducer, but also like the bouncer, because if they're I only bring people to my buddies that I think are going to help and have good intentions, and then I get to bounce the ones out that don't. And so, yeah, it takes time. It takes being present, showing up. Like I said, those hats, those donuts, it's just all part of the community that is ag.
If we could elaborate on that a little bit, Neil, because you talked about kind of being a gatekeeper there.
Sure.
Would you mind walking us through your process on how you overlook, let's say, a new company or a technology, or and maybe it's established too, but to determine from your end if it's something that's worthwhile or not?
Well, like for when I was in my consulting business, it took a while to figure out that model because a lot of companies thought, hey, just throw some money and that's it. And for me, that it wasn't a personal fit. I'm not that great of a sales guy. I like to talk. I'm a farm boy, right? And I just want to help. I genuinely want to help because that was my dad. That was me on the farm. So it's that kind of blanked on the question.
No, go back. Just
Yeah,
basically, you mentioned that you've got
betting
a lot.
companies, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would later years I developed I didn't say these words out loud. It was kind of a dating process. Um, I didn't want to just jump into a new company and soil my hard worked reputation because I want to be the guy that says this isn't for you. I represent this, but I don't see a fit here. You
Yeah.
know, because it's not. It's back that some will and some aren't, and but somebody's hunting for you. So I would take time and say, let's start slow. Now, not everybody can do this, but this was my process. So I wanted to see kind of what they could do, and I'd put them in front of those guys that I knew wanted to be early adopters, and I also was very open and upfront with those early adopters. Look, these are the guys I'm talking to. This is early. Here's what we know. Here's what's proven. Um, Here's what's worked in other countries. That's another really kind of key thing for international businesses. They like to come in and say, look, we have all this trial data, and that's important. That helps establish trust, but it's not a home run either, because farming conditions are so different all over the world. I mean, we've seen some certain high density stuff, say work really well in Italy, for example, but then we've had some failures over here when they just try to like directly transfer. Now a lot of those companies have made some tweaks and improvements and got past that. So it's a learning curve. We're figuring it out. So for me, I just would go slow, be honest with my clients. This is what we know, and these are the question marks. So if you're willing to kind of take this journey with us, let's go. And most of them are pretty open to giving you a shot, maybe giving you 10 acres. And um, I've never seen any product come out swinging and just blow up in ag. Like, I hate to say it, that is a challenge of it because it's so marketed to. I mean, I guess just being a older, or maybe the oldest industry, right? Like, we got to eat, so that's day one. That's Garden of Eden, right? So it's just heavily marketed to the billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar industry. So there's just been a lot out there. And so be okay saying, hey, we're going to walk together. Let's start with a couple of your acres. Let's give it a try. And then it'll grow from there. So, and then once you have those first few, early adopters that are on board, make sure it's okay. Hey, do you know anybody who also could, that simple extra question that's missed most of the time? Who else in your sphere of influence or in your network or who's your beer drinking buddy, right? That we could talk to. And that way, going into the next guy, it's much warmer. You already have a third party story. Hey, go talk to, Tom or Bill over there and just hear his story. Don't listen to me. I'm trying to sell it, right? I mean, I literally would use those words with guys. I'm the sales guy here. Go talk to one of your colleagues and he'll give you the straight because ag is can be a very direct and honest industry. And I love that about it. I think maybe I don't have enough experience in other ones, but for me, they'll talk direct. So that kind of.
Oh yeah, no, that was good. And I want to add on to that too. Is you talked about coming in. We got one question. I'll get to that after this. You talked about coming in and just taking it by storm. What would your response be to an ag tech company, let's say a VC backed company they've got this great technology, they're coming in and they're expecting 10 times year over year growth consistently? How would you respond to that?
I'm nervous to give my actual answer, but the reality is there's just some challenges there. I had an internal rule, which I ended up breaking, and it did work, that I just really wouldn't, bank too heavily on traditional VC backed companies. So I don't want to insult anybody, but the problem I had was it's conflicting models. Um, the VC is literally, the lens is, how do we scale? How do we blow this thing up? All the opportunity, all the potential's there, and then some. I'd say most of the time they underestimate what the real potential is. The problem is the timeline. Ag being so cyclical, and seasonal, right? You have certain windows. That's the other way you would leverage AgProz is knowing, being able to target companies by crops. You need to get ahead of the guys before. I mean, you hit midsummer, you hit any nut guy, forget about it. That guy's going 100 miles an hour, blazing all over the place. You're not going to get in front of him. So that model's tough, because if you miss that window, you almost have a whole nother year before that happens again. And if you have, KPIs and all these like projected, revenue streams that are coming in, I personally have never seen those two models line up. So I did work for a company, they're international, and they convinced me that their venture back was a little bit different. And it turned out to be true. It wasn't quite on the explosive growth model. So I think if you are an ag company and you've taken VC money and you're kind of down that path, I would pad the realistic time frame as to, because a lot of guys want to see it work. And especially if it's technology that came to the market, swung and missed, that's tough. But the story I'd use on that, and a lot of guys related to, was because I would just ask them, hey, clearly you tried it, it didn't work. Probably not open to trying it again. I mean, you probably got burned. I mean, it's kind of like, you remember those old brick phones, the first cell phones we had, the big bag, 10-minute battery life, and, dropped almost every call. But those got better. So, maybe you just maybe you're remembering the brick phone, not realizing that, my Galaxy or, iPhone is now a supercomputer in your pocket. So kind of, have fun with it, but use real life application stories to help them understand that, yeah, that clearly didn't work. Good thing, here's the different things that made it better. But yeah, so there's definitely challenges there.
Well, I'm going to read off a few of the questions here, Neil.
Sure.
So I like how we chatted about being humble when approaching a potential buyer. Have you ever not made a sale after seeing it wasn't a fit and then reached out later when it might have changed, or connected you to another, or perhaps they connected you to another person who they felt was a better fit? I assume that curiosity and trust helps create a better relationship than a typical pitch, swing and a miss. So I'll paraphrase that in just saying, what happens if a customer says you determine they're not a fit? Is that possible to change? Do you follow up later? And how do you do that while appearing genuine without necessarily looking to just push some product here? And has that case ever happened to you, to where someone who wasn't a fit became a fit later?
Try to think of a specific case, but yeah, at the end of the day, it's, good sales is people helping people. So I think setting realistic expectations is the key to it. As far as not being a fit, yeah, there's a lot of parameters. Could be their own, we call it mind trash, right? Maybe they did have that bad experience, and so it's just fresh. Sometimes, time heals all, even in relationships, right? So really, really, you got to be okay with it. But I never hear no. I've just trained my brain to see that, hey, do you want this? No. Okay. No, fair enough. But I'm not leaving on that. I'm still going to kind of pry around and find, the potential problems, because that's where the real purchase is made. And so I just, hey, clearly not a fit for you. And I think they mentioned it in the comment, but that's almost the exact. But maybe you have a neighbor or colleague you've heard complain about this same thing. And then kind of what you do in that is say, hey, clearly, it's not a fit here. I get it. It's, we're not for everybody. I'm always okay admitting that we're not the one size fits all. Right. But hey, do you have any neighbors that had a problem with this or was struggling in this department? or maybe, and then give us a story where something went wrong and you help fix it. So really you're asking for a referral, but you're also rephrasing your kind of solution in a way. And sometimes you'll be shocked because they'll hook onto that one thing that you hadn't mentioned prior. And then you're right back in it as if that prior conversation never happened. So really, yeah, just how do you fix problems they have? That's it.
And I got a question here from Jim Montgomery. He asked, I think tagging on with this is, if a farmer is not a good fit, would you recommend another product / guy who's better for that farm?
Good question. I have before, and it's not easy. Um, well, that kind of brings up another good point. And as a actual, you should know your competition in and out, um, and be real. My partner John has a good story where one of his friends, who is a direct competitor, called him up and said, "Hey, our factory slammed. Can you help this guy?" So absolutely be okay. Being, again, it's being that resource, being that tool. When they got a problem, I want them thinking Neil Knaak. I, I might refer, a competitor, but I want that first dial to be me. So to do that, sometimes you might have to sacrifice a deal, but guarantee the next time when it is a fit, um, that's, I'm still getting the call. So, and definitely don't go in like trashing. I've heard pitches like that where like, oh, these other guys don't do that. Don't beat up your competition, because you got flaws too. And so, there's no perfect product, perfect solution, perfect person. Um, so yeah, hope that it kind of answered it.
Yeah, no, I think that was perfect. And then if anyone has any more questions, just keep chatting them in. So Neil, you mentioned don't go in there with buzzwords such as, ROI, greater yields. I don't know if lower cost or something like that would be factored in there. How do you, now, obviously those are performance goals or other outcomes that growers are going to want to see from a technology, but how do you communicate that without coming across as kind of speaking without substance, as I would define that? So how do you conceptualize ROI or showcase the value of the technology to a grower? Is that something that you do showcase and walk them through, or is it typically one of the things that they either get it or they don't?
No, I've definitely gone in. I mean, you kind of want to get away from that, kind of pitch, and it's just, it's in that sounding different, and it can be challenging because maybe you sell a commodity fertilizer, right? And everybody has one. But at the end of the day, you also got to realize part of your value is you, the salesperson, knowing that you care, knowing that you're going to show up. Um, I've been out at clients at 11:30 at night. I was fixing a piece of a GPS sensor on a piece of equipment. I'm going to do whatever it takes, to make sure they're taken care of. Because if their business doesn't function smoothly, I got no reason to be there. So as far as getting away from buzzwords, that's where the conversation, and that's where them talking more than you is going to come into play, because you're going to hear them use words, and then that's a good relational tool, is kind of mirroring that. So if they start using a specific word, or and we joke a lot about even like when I'm calling the guys up north, you got to think, do I say almond or almond, right? It's just being familiar. And so I try to hear their language and then kind of mirror that in my own. But really the performance indicators may not be their perceived problem. And I say perceived problem very intentionally, because if they don't believe it to be an issue, it's not an issue. It may be something they've normalized, like they said, their granddaddy did it, their dad did it, and that's just the way it is. So your job is to, with better questions, kind of drive a little wedge in there and just get, well, okay, I hear you, and that has worked. Like, don't try and combat that statement. I typically agree with it. Traditionally it has worked. However, here are some, potential problems that we've seen. Or back to a third party story, I was working with another guy, he told me the exact same thing, right? And obviously make sure this is true, so don't go fabricating stuff. Um, but you do it long enough, you collect these stories, and I literally write them down. Um, and so that way you're chambered and you're ready. So, I was dealing with a guy, he told me, it's the same thing. However, he was open to giving it a try, and that's really all I asked for. So we jumped on 10 acres, and he was really surprised to see, that he was struggling with this and it got better. Again, I didn't go straight to, got more yields or got more ROI. I went to what did it solve, right? He had this
Yeah.
problem and he fixed it. Um, would that be important to you? And it's always back to them, always back to them, because they're going to drive the process. And I've certain scenarios, if I hit that problem well enough, they're chasing you. I'm not even kidding. Cause now it's like, help, right? You've established that, or we've established that this is an issue, and you've, presented that your solution can fix that. Like, help me get there. So really at the end of the day, you're just trying to get them to talk about, what's wrong. I use a little doctor story a lot. Doctors are great salespeople, by the way, because you go in and they what's wrong? It's my back, it's hurting. Okay, well, what'd you do? Well, it's up on a ladder or something, and well, how long does that hurt? Did you take anything? And so salespeople should kind of be the same way. Oh, you got W damage. Like, what products have you tried? Or what solutions in the past did those work? And you're just kind of digging in, and what you're doing is connecting the emotional response to the problem, because it's human nature. We all normalize this stuff. That's been a problem for the last 20 years. It's probably going to still be a problem. Well, I can help, pick me, but you don't get there unless you get them talking about what the issues are. So I guess the short of it is I would have them do most of the talking, and then just kind of mimic their problems and words back to them, and then rephrase your product or service, focusing only on those issues they talked about. Don't and I've been guilty of it. So, hope you don't think I'm like the world's perfect, because I'm not. I'm still learning too. I still go to class actually to learn and, perfect the craft. And that's really about, getting them to, establish those problems, and don't go back to what you think is their issue, which might be more yields, back to those buzzwords, or less damage, or better or whatever. They might think quarter ton per acre is perfectly fine, and then there's no sale there, even if you're thinking triple that, right? If they don't perceive that as an issue, there's no sale there. And so again, you train your brain never to hear no, just either not today or maybe. That's it.
Excellent. Well, I want to wrap up here on the AgProz side. So we've talked a lot, and this is the main component of the webinar is let's get everything to where as you start using AgProz and then actually apply it once you gather data, once you focus your strategy. But I want to end on the AgProz because I don't want to lose sight of the fact that AgProz, you take these skill sets, it just magnifies the potential outcome of the results here. What would you say, Neil, to someone that was in the sales space, considering sales, maybe even considering a tool set like AgProz? Like, what should they be considering to see if AgProz is a good fit for them and is going to help them grow their business?
Well, first off, it sounds simple, but reach out. I don't know two more passionate guys about ag and helping other people. It's one of the things that connected me and John. We met on a tram in Florida at a convention for John Deere, and I mean, just almost instant. I think we connected, and it's just that root that we want to help. So we're not just a software. I mean, I coach a lot of our users. I've opened doors for them. If I you have to balance that because obviously we have a lot of competitors on our system. But just getting engaged, knowing your territory, understanding their problems, and then creating a plan of attack, and that's absolutely done through AgProz. Back to the competitor thing, it's I find it funny that I think we're the best. I really do, and it's because you have two ag sales guys that know the problem. We built this for us. And so I love our culture. People tied into us are going to get more connected. And that's another good point just in general. Get super connected in ag. I mean, if you're a startup, there's a lot of places to be, and you should be. I mean, there's community events. If you're tied with, water tech energy, definitely get in touch with Ben, the Wet Center. They're an awesome resource. Hella great people. Grace, just get in there, get connected, figure out how you can help. Be talking to colleges, be talking to schools. Those are the up and coming, future ag people, and your product or service needs to be there. We're looking to start doing some networking events within AgProz. I would say, and you have this guarantee from me. So you just to sign up, you sign up on our website, give it a try. I mean, we're very simple and powerful tool. Our tagline is, knowledge is the key to success, and knowledge is just not. So having the information is a big portion of it, but then we also help you on how to deploy it. So who are your target audiences? How should you be framing some of your messaging? A product that's coming next is we do some direct mail marketing for companies. So coming is going to be a solution where when you send out a flyer, it's actually going to tie back to the math. So now as a rep, you're going to see who got your flyer, what information was on it. And it just gives you a little bit warmer of a conversation coming in. Just like, hey, did you happen to, catch my flyer? It's like, oh yeah, because sales is really about touch points too, right? You talked about developing trust. And that's why it's so key to be the information person or the supplier. Send out an email. Hey, saw this article. It's just one more. Oh yeah, Neil. Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, no, I do need that, because it's human nature. We're all busy, and you just have to. I think Ziegler said, it's encouragement's like bathing. It's not once and you're done. You have to bathe yourself on a regular basis. Fostering that relationship with growers is no different. It's being a resource, being a tool, being the guy that, I think I just kind of blessed and lucky in doing this and figuring this out, and maybe my mentor helping. But last week got a call from a large grower and just said, hey, kind of curious about this tech. I had nothing to do with it, but he called because he knew I'm connected, and just I have a good network. And so, and I've done that just by being the information guy. So again, back to that earlier question. Yeah. If you got a competitor who does it better or cheaper, or you feel is a better fit, yeah, great. You'll get him, or he'll be your, and then maybe he'll try it and realize why he doesn't like it. So it's hard to play the long game, but you really got to have that mindset. These things take time.
Well, Neil, I want to thank you for taking the time and sharing your thoughts and experience here and just the ag space, and honestly, just good sales discussion as well. I mean, these are skill sets that could apply to any industry and do well on top of that. So for everyone here, just want to let you know that I fully support AgProz and what they do, considering all the ag tech startups we work with. If you're making sales in the industry, I think it's a cornerstone of your strategy of figuring out who you should target, how you should target them, and gathering more information in advance on your prospects. I mean, it's just going in there more educated on who you should be going after and how you should frame that discussion. So, Neil, if someone's curious, I will say with all of that value, considering the price as well of the AgProz system, it's a no-brainer. So I'd say reach out to Neil to learn more about the different packages involved and how they onboard their clients. So we'll end there. And then next month, we'll be bringing in JP from the Current Venture Group to come in and speak about basically raising money and what an investor looks for in a startup. We'll get another perspective on that. So thank you all, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks, babe.
Thanks so much, Neil. A lot of great information.
Yeah, you guys have a wonderful day.